Egypt is poised for more demonstrations in Cairo tomorrow over a new constitutional crisis. President Mohamed Morsi's challenge to the judiciary involving holdovers from the Mubarak regime and long traditions. Joining me now is MSNBC's Middle East diplomacy analyst and counselor at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, Ambassador Dennis Ross. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
You too.
Egypt. Now, perhaps Morsi felt empowered by his role as a peacemaker on Gaza, but he ran right into long-standing traditions, as you were just noting.
He did. I think, bear in mind a couple of things. Number one, he felt that the role he played made him a central figure in the region as a whole. In Mubarak's last few years, the fact is Mubarak was increasingly on the sidelines, not playing a major role in the Middle East. So here's President Morsi thinking he can play upon the Egyptian self-image that they are a leader in the region, and he could use that as a device to make a move internally. He made that move, but I think it's a clear miscalculation because he took on the independence of the judiciary. It doesn't matter that many of these were leaders in the judiciary who were holdovers from the Mubarak regime. They still represented a symbol of independence, and suddenly he was trying to remove all checks on his own power.
So you're suggesting he's going to have to find a face-saving way to step back from this brink?
I do think that there's the backlash that has been produced is such that he's going to want to find a way out of it. Now, I think he can obviously mobilize the Muslim Brotherhood to put pressure on people on the street, but that isn't a great outcome for him either because it produces ongoing turmoil.
Former Defense Minister and former Prime Minister Ehud Barak in Israel has announced that he's not going to seek a position in the next cabinet after the election. Does this signal anything about the situation vis-a-vis Iran, since he was one of the most hawkish of the cabinet members on Iran?
Well, no doubt it reflects, I'm sure, a set of personal considerations for him. But the fact is, he has been the architect of the options vis-a-vis Iran. He has been the one who basically has outlined why it has to be dealt with, even though he's wanted to put it in the context of close U.S.-Israeli relations. Nonetheless, he has seen this as an existential threat to Israel, and that ultimately Israel has to find a way to deal with it either on its own or with us.
Israel has talked threateningly about a ship that they say has loaded with rockets, potentially heading to Gaza. So is there another crisis brewing, and where do we stand with the ceasefire, where both sides seem to be testing each other over the last few days?
I believe the ceasefire, in fact, is going to hold. If you look at all three parties who were involved in it, aside from the United States, who I think did play a pivotal role at the end, the fact is, President Morsi, the last thing he needs is for something that he brokered to break down right now. It's a source of credibility and legitimacy for him. It enhances his power. He's got problems on the inside. He doesn't need a problem on the outside. Hamas is claiming they had great achievements. If they get back into a conflict with the Israelis, there go those achievements. And the Israelis obviously want to have calm as well. So I think all three sides have an interest in preserving this. There will be tests from time to time. That's a given. The fact that the Iranians will try to get arms in there very quickly, that's also a given. And I think the Israelis will act to prevent that, but I don't think it leads to a breakdown of the ceasefire.
And then we have another situation which may be a sideshow in terms of the real impact, but we have a vote scheduled for Thursday at the United Nations where the Palestinians are seeking some legitimacy. The other Palestinians, the Fatah wing, the West Bank, Abbas is coming, right. Mahmoud Abbas is coming to New York to have a vote in the General Assembly, which will be a largely symbolic vote on statehood, especially now after Hamas has flexed its muscles and shown that military might, not diplomacy, is the way to real legitimacy internationally. It seems almost foolhardy on the part of the other Palestinians.
I think what's going on is, first of all, you're President Abbas. You've just been seen to be basically irrelevant to what's been going on. Supposedly, Gaza, which is part of what would be any Palestinian state, you have no influence or control over. So this is also a way to remind everybody that he's still there. Now, the problem with it is that it is symbolic. It doesn't advance the cause of peace. It doesn't advance Palestinian interests, but it's his way of trying to demonstrate relevancy. And the real question is there a way to get beyond this so that we get away from what's purely symbolic and actually move on what is substantive? As long as we're focused on symbols, I mean, we see a perpetuation of the Palestinian history, which doesn't lead to substantive outcomes. It leads to more symbolic kinds of postures.
Do you see any way that we begin to deal directly with Hamas as a political entity?
not unless Hamas is prepared to accept the basic conditions that we and others have established, what are known as the Quartet conditions. I don't know why we would establish a set of ground rules for them that would be different than the ground rules we established for the PLO. We had a series of requirements that the PLO had to meet. They had to recognize Israel. They had to renounce terror and violence. If they were not prepared to meet that, there wouldn't have been a dialogue with the PLO. Why would we allow Hamas not to meet any of those conditions and deal with it? I don't see it.
Dennis Ross, thank you, Ambassador. Good to see you.
My pleasure.